My wife said she was on a business trip. That night, I heard the dog barking violently in the kitchen. I went down to check and saw the back door ajar. I thought it was a burglar until I heard water running in the guest bathroom and the humming of a song my wife hated. I froze, realizing it was. My wife said she was on a business trip to Chicago, a standard 3-day conference for pharmaceutical sales that she had been attending like clockwork for the last 5 years, or at least that was the narrative I had been fed along with the slow drip poison of believing I was losing my mind, a narrative constructed with such meticulous detail that I had no reason to doubt the woman who slept beside me. That night, the house felt particularly hollow, a cavernous silence that amplified the creeping dread I had been carrying in my gut for months, a sensation I had been dismissing as the paranoia of an overworked architect who was simply projecting his own stress onto a marriage that was, by all external accounts, perfect. I had kissed Elena goodbye at the door at 5 a.m., watched her load her suitcases into the Uber with that practiced, efficient grace of hers, and promised to water her hydrangeas, standing on the porch until the taillights disappeared around the bend, feeling a strange knot in my stomach that I couldn't untangle. I spent the rest of the day trying to ignore the nagging feeling that the emotional distance between us wasn't just burnout, but a chasm that was being deliberately widened by someone holding a shovel. I went to bed early, exhausted by the mental gymnastics of trying to trust a woman who had become a stranger in her own home, my body heavy with a fatigue that felt unnatural, a lethargy that pulled me under like a riptide. Sleep was a fitful, shallow thing, a black water I was drowning in, broken only by the sound of our golden retriever, Barnaby, barking violently in the kitchen. Barnaby was not a guard dog. He was a creature of aggressive affection who would lick a burglar to death, a dog who greeted the mailman with a wagging tail and a soft woo-woo. So the guttural, defensive snarl ripping through the floorboards was a sound I had never heard before, a primal warning that sent a shot of adrenaline straight into my heart, piercing through the fog of the sedative I didn't yet know was coursing through my veins. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept under the bed, a cliche I never thought I'd use, and crept down the hallway, my bare feet silent on the hardwood, my limbs feeling heavy and uncoordinated, my mind racing through scenarios of intruders and home invasions, terrified not for my property but for the violation of the sanctuary I was trying so hard to hold together. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, the shadows dancing in the periphery of my vision, and as I reached the top of the stairs, the barking stopped abruptly, replaced by a whimpering sound that was somehow worse, the sound of a dog confused and submissive, followed by the click of claws retreating on the linoleum. I moved down the stairs, gripping the bat until my knuckles turned white, sweat slicking my palms as I rounded the corner into the kitchen. The back door was ajar, the lock mechanism engaging with the frame, but the door itself pushed open, allowing the humid night breeze to blow the sheer curtains inward like ghosts. And my first thought was that someone had broken in, that I was walking into a confrontation that would end in violence. I moved toward the door to close it, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, the air tasting of ozone and impending disaster. But then I heard a sound that froze the blood in my veins and made the bat feel suddenly heavy and useless in my hands. It was the sound of the shower running in the guest bathroom down the hall, the one we rarely used because the water pressure was terrible, accompanied by a low, melodic humming that drifted through the house with a terrifying, casual, intimate familiarity. The tune was Piano Man by Billy Joel, a song that Elena had famously, vocally detested since the day we met, claiming it reminded her of a traumatic breakup in college, a song she would turn off the car radio to avoid, a song she forbade me from playing at our wedding or even humming in her presence. And yet, there it was, being hummed with a casual, happy lilt by someone inside my house, while my wife was supposedly 600 miles away in a hotel room. I moved toward the bathroom door, the wood slightly warped from a leak we had fixed last winter, and through the crack, I saw the steam billowing out, carrying the scent of lavender soap, her soap, the expensive brand she ordered from France that she claimed was only for special occasions. I pushed the door open with the tip of the bat, not knowing what I expected to find, perhaps a stranger, perhaps a ghost, but what I saw was infinitely more shattering. It was Elena. She was standing in the shower, the glass door fogged but transparent enough to see her silhouette, washing her hair with the vigor of someone preparing for a night out, humming that hated song as if it were her favorite anthem, completely at ease in the home she had supposedly left 12 hours ago. My brain short-circuited, unable to reconcile the image of my wife, who was supposed to be giving a keynote presentation in Chicago, standing in our guest shower at 2 a.m. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of the betrayal, watching the water run down the glass until she turned off the tap, wrapped a towel around herself, and stepped out, wiping the steam from the mirror to admire her reflection. When she saw me standing in the doorway, bat in hand, looking like a man who had just seen a phantom, she didn't scream either. She didn't gasp. She didn't cover herself in shame. She froze for a split second, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror, and then a mask slammed down over her features, a transformation so instant and terrifying it chilled me to the bone, the shift from a relaxed woman to a calculating predator. "David," she said, her voice calm, almost bored, as she turned to face me, tightening the towel around her chest. "Put the bat down. You're having an episode." The accusation hit me harder than a physical blow because it was the culmination of a year-long campaign. For the last 12 months, she had been subtly convincing me that my stress stress levels were causing memory lapses, that I was becoming paranoid, that I was seeing things that weren't there, effectively rewriting my reality until I didn't trust my own senses. She had gaslighted me so effectively that for a second, standing there in the steam, I actually questioned if I was hallucinating, if this was a fever dream brought on by the herbal tea she had insisted I drink before she left. "I'm in Chicago, David," she continued, walking past me into the hallway, trailing wet footprints and the smell of lavender, not even looking me in the eye. "You're sleepwalking again. You know, doctor, Eris said this would happen if you didn't take your meds. Go back to bed." The sheer audacity of it, the absolute refusal to acknowledge reality, snapped something inside me. I wasn't asleep. I was standing in a puddle of water she had dripped onto the floor. I followed her, my voice finding its way out of my throat as a ragged, confused shout. "Stop! You are not in Chicago. You are standing right here. Why are you here? Why did you lie?" She spun around, her face twisted in a sneer that I didn't recognize, the face of a woman who despised me and had simply been tolerating my existence. "I came back because I forgot my presentation materials," she lied, the excuse flimsy and pathetic, crumbling under the slightest scrutiny. "I took the red eye. I didn't want to wake you because you've been so fragile lately. God, you are so suffocating, David. This is why I can't breathe in this marriage. You catch me taking a shower after a flight, and you turn it into an interrogation." She was pivoting, turning the blame on me, a tactic she had perfected, but the pieces weren't fitting. If she came back for a presentation, why the guest shower? Why the back door ajar? Why the humming of the song she hated? Why hadn't she driven her car, which was still parked at the airport? And then, as if on cue, the front door opened. It wasn't forced. It was unlocked with a key I had never given out. A man walked in, a man I recognized instantly as our neighbor, Greg, a divorced dad who lived 3 houses down, a man I had grilled steaks with, a man I had helped build a deck for, a man I considered a friend. He was carrying a bottle of expensive red wine and a bag of Thai takeout, looking comfortable, looking like he belonged there, looking like a man coming home to his wife. When he saw me standing there with the bat, wild-eyed and shaking, and Elena in a towel, he dropped the wine. The bottle shattered, red liquid pooling on the floor like blood, staining the grout, and the silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. "Greg?" I whispered, the betrayal doubling, tripling, expanding until it filled the room like toxic gas. Elena didn't look embarrassed. She looked annoyed that her plan had been disrupted. She looked at Greg and rolled her eyes, a gesture of intimate conspiracy that hurt more than the infidelity itself. "He heard the dog," she said to him, talking about me as if I were a nuisance, a broken appliance that had started making noise again. "I told you he was a light sleeper, even with the dose." Greg looked at me, then at her, his face pale, his nice guy facade cracking to reveal the coward underneath. "You said he was on medication. You said he wouldn't wake up until noon." The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. Medication. I wasn't on medication. I didn't take sleeping pills. But then I remembered the tea. The tea she had made me with such insistent sweetness, watching me drink every drop before she left for the airport. The heaviness in my limbs, the fog in my brain. It wasn't fatigue. It was a sedative. The realization washed over me in a cold wave of nausea. She hadn't just lied about the trip. She had drugged me. She had drugged me so she could use our house, our sanctuary, to sleep with my neighbor while I lay unconscious upstairs, a prop in my own life. The rage that erupted in me was unlike anything I had ever felt, a cold, clear fury that sharpened my senses and burned through the drug's haze. "Get out," I said to Greg, raising the bat, taking a step toward him. "Get out before I kill you." He didn't argue. He didn't try to explain. He turned and ran, scrambling over the broken glass, the cowardice radiating off him, leaving the door wide open to the night. I turned to Elena. She wasn't running. She was standing there, crossing her arms, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "You're pathetic," she spat, her voice venomous. "You think this matters? You think you can stop this? I've been planning this for months. You're losing your mind, David. Everyone knows it. I've told your parents, I've told your boss, I've told our friends that you're having a breakdown. You're unstable. Who are they going to believe? The loving wife who travels for work and cares for her sick husband, or the lunatic who chases neighbors with a baseball bat and hallucinates?" She was doubling down on the gaslighting, betting on the foundation of lies she had already laid to bury me. She was telling me, to my face, that she had engineered my social destruction to cover her tracks. I retreated to the bedroom, locking the door, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I didn't call the police immediately. I felt unsafe, unsure if they would believe the unstable husband. I called my sister, Sarah, a vicious divorce attorney who had never liked Elena, the innocent bystander in our family drama who had warned me years ago that Elena's charm was a mask. "Don't say a word to her," Sarah instructed, her voice the lifeline I needed, cutting through the panic. "Record everything. Get out of the house. If she drugged you, we need proof. Go to the ER immediately. Do not pass go. Do not let her stop you." I grabbed my wallet and keys, climbing out the bedroom window onto the porch roof because I was terrified to walk past Elena in the hallway, terrified of what she might do now that the mask was off and she knew she was cornered. I drove to the hospital in a fugue state, Barnaby in the passenger seat because I refused to leave him with her. And as the doctors drew my blood, confirming the presence of a heavy dose of benzodiazepines, a drug I had never been prescribed, the reality of my marriage dissolved into ash. I sat in that plastic chair, holding my dog's leash, realizing that the woman I had shared a bed with for 7 years had risked my life for a convenient affair. The next few weeks were a blur of legal violence. I didn't go back to the house. Sarah filed for an emergency restraining order and temporary possession of the home based on the drugging and the immediate threat to my safety. We hired a private investigator, the external intervener, who finally validated my reality, uncovering a web of deceit that went back years. It wasn't just an affair, it was a systematic dismantling of our life. Elena wasn't just sleeping with Greg, she was funneling money from our joint accounts into a crypto wallet Greg managed. The business trips were real, but they were vacations she took with him, funded by my salary, while she sent me photos of hotel conference rooms she downloaded from Google Images. The song she hated was their song, a twisted inside joke she played on me to test her control. The most harrowing revelation came when the PI accessed her cloud account and found texts between her and Greg discussing how to induce a permanent breakdown in me so she could get power of attorney and sell the house out from under me. Without a divorce, they mocked my fragility, laughed about the tea, and bet on how long it would take before I checked myself into a facility. Reading those texts was like reading the script of my own murder, written by the person I loved most. The confrontation in court was the climax of the nightmare. Elena arrived looking like the victim, dressed in modest clothes, crying on cue, claiming I was abusive and paranoid, that I had imagined the drugging, that I was a danger to myself, and she had fled for her safety. Her lawyer painted a picture of a devoted wife trying to manage a mentally ill husband. But we had the blood test, we had the financial records, we had the texts, and crucially, we had the testimony of the neighbor, Greg. When faced with criminal charges for conspiracy, fraud, and administering a controlled substance, Greg turned on her faster than a rat on a sinking ship. He admitted everything on the stand, the plan, the drugging, the years of gaslighting in exchange for a lighter sentence. I watched Elena's face as he spoke, waiting for the crack in her composure, and when it came, it was ugly. She didn't cry, she screamed. She screamed at him, a primal, vicious sound that echoed in the courtroom, revealing the monster beneath the skin to everyone present, including her own lawyer who looked horrified. The judge, a stern woman who had seen enough domestic manipulation to recognize evil when it sat in front of her, granted me everything. The divorce, the house, the restitution, and a permanent protective order. The resolution didn't feel like a victory at first, it felt like survival. I returned to the house only once to supervise the movers as they packed her things, which I had mandated be done by a third party. I found the bottle of wine still stained on the hallway floor, a permanent, dried reminder of the night my life broke open. I sold the house a month later. I couldn't live in a place where the walls had witnessed my slow erasure, where every room held a memory of a lie. I moved to a smaller place across town, a loft with big windows and no guest shower for secrets to hide in. It took 2 years of therapy to stop checking the locks 5 times a night, to stop flinching when I heard a dog bark, to stop wondering if my memories were real or implanted. But eventually, the new normal settled in, a life built on the bedrock of truth rather than the quicksand of manipulation. I met someone new, a woman named Clara who hates Piano Man because it's overplayed, not because it's a weapon, and who tells me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. I learned that trust is not a given, but a thing earned through transparency. The vindication came not from seeing Elena lose everything, though she did, ending up with a criminal record, a mountain of debt, and no friends, but from reclaiming my own mind. I know now that I am not crazy. I know that my instincts were right, and I know that the silence of an empty house is not something to fear, but a space where I can finally, truly hear myself think. The dog, Barnaby, is gray in the muzzle now, but he sleeps soundly at the foot of my bed, and neither of us jumps at shadows anymore. We survived the intruder who lived in our heart, and that is enough. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of survival and truth, and remember to always trust your gut. It knows the truth long before your heart is ready to accept it.